Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this evening with Kieran and Chris from the Conservation Volunteers. We're just going to wait a wee minute till everybody joins. I see we've got quite a few joining up already, which is absolutely brilliant. And some familiar names and some new names as well, so that's fantastic. So tonight we're going to be talking about natural pest control. So none of us really want to use chemicals, nasty chemicals in our growing our fruit and veg. And actually, if you think about it and a little bit, you can get away without having to do that at all. So that's what this evening's about. We still have a few people joining, so we'll give it another half a minute or so. So for those of you who've just joined, you're very welcome. And this evening we have Kieran McHugh and Chris Wood from the Conservation Volunteers.
Hello.
And the guys who know everything, and they're going to be chatting this evening about natural pest control. So this evening, because that's a difficult thing to do in a video, we have got a PowerPoint instead, which Kieran shared with me earlier. So I'm going to share my screen now. And I think everybody has probably joined now. So we'll just go through the screens one by one. Hopefully everybody can see that. Oh, sorry, just a wee bit of housekeeping. If you've got a question at all, if you could use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, that would be really useful. And feel free to ask questions as you go along, and I'll try and feed them back through the guys. So would you want to start off, Kieran, with or Chris, with the first slide about aphids?
I mean, Kieran, if you want, after you.
Yeah, well, as it says there, plants, your plants will look distressed. You'll see them. They could be turning yellow or starting to wilt. And if they've been well watered, then you know that there's some other problem there. But normally you would see the aphids. Maybe if you turn the leaves over underneath, then you'll see them. As I've said on the bottom there, it says aphids can be removed easily by squashing them in between your fingers. As long as you're not too rough on the leaves. But some people don't like doing that. So if you spray the top and underneath with a very mild detergent, even if it's just using the old washing up water that you've used from doing your dishes, as long as it's not still hot, let it cool down. But you can also make a nice soapy solution. Put it in an old recycled squirter bottle, and that will last for months. But what that does is that kills the aphids on contact. So give it a good spraying. But if you do decide to go down that road, what I'd always suggest is to do a trial first on a couple of leaves, and then come back the next day. And if the leaves are still okay and they've not started to go brown and dying sort of thing, then you know that you've made the correct solution. Always do a test first. Also, you could encourage other predators like ladybirds, lacewings, hoverflies, wasps. Wasps eat more aphids than any other thing, really. Also, if you put other plants nearby that attracts the likes of your wasps into your garden, that would keep them in there. Earwigs is another great predator for aphids. But like I'll tell you further on, you can trap your earwigs and pop them onto the aphids just to put them on the plant there.
Really, that's really interesting, because I didn't know that at all. And I found this year was there were a lot of earwigs everywhere.
Yeah.
So they were doing good the whole time then.
Well, what it is with the earwigs is they will eat your green if there's no other food source for them, but I think they prefer the aphids. So what we do is we trap them in a damp newspaper. Do you know, it's a good way of using up your old plastic straws as well, because if you just leave them out and the earwigs will go inside them, and then you just pick the straw up and take it to the host plant that's got the aphids in, and there you have a natural predator doing its job. And you've used no pesticides, you've paid no money for anything. All you've done is relocated a nasty looking earwig to your aphids.
That's fantastic. Very good.
To go back to Kieran's point about planting plants next to where your aphids are, things like daisies, hoverflies only have a small tongue, so they can only drink from like umbellifers and the daisy family and things like that. So I mean, everyone likes oxeye daisies in the garden. Why not plant them all over to encourage the hoverflies and things? You can also buy ladybirds online. I think you can buy several hundred for £20 or something. Once you put them on the plant, they will spread out and they will scatter, but you should have plenty of ladybirds for the next few years once they lay the eggs and they hatch. So I mean, yeah, it's just a way of encouraging things. So, and don't be frightened of the wasps. Like Kieran says, the wasps eat more flies and pests than anything really. As long as you ignore them, they'll hopefully ignore you. So.
Okay, that's brilliant. Great. I have somebody's had a question. Oh yes, Nicola is asking, what plants would you recommend to attract predators?
Well, obviously the hoverflies, like the daisies and the umbellifers. Is it yarrow and things like that? Are they classed as umbellifers? But
Yeah.
it's the likes of the big cow parsleys and the ones with the big flat white flowers.
Sure. Even herb fennel.
Yeah, dill.
Yeah, fennel and
Dill's
things.
another good one. What Chris is saying is anything really that is a single flowered, not something that's enclosed, like he said, moths and wasps, they like to get their tongue in. If it's an enclosed plant, like an enclosed dahlia, they can't really get in to get their tongues in. So, like he was saying,
simple flower,
yeah, simple flower.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we'll move on then. The next one is sooty mold, not a pest, but caused by pests. So, would you like just to run through that, please, Kieran?
Yeah, you find this a lot under trees. If you've got your vegetable plot under trees, especially lime trees, what it's caused a lot of the time is the honeydew is the excrement from the aphids, and it causes a sticky honey type glue onto leaves and onto your apples or vegetables or whatever. And then the sooty mold is a fungal parasitic thing that sticks to it. So if you spot it, good housekeeping is a good way of getting rid of it. You know, if you see it starting to form, to just go out there and wash it off. That'll be your best bet of getting rid of it, really.
Okay, if you anything to add to that, Chris? Or
not really. No, just make sure you don't damage the leaves or the fruit when you're scrubbing them, like Kieran said, and should be fine. So yeah.
Sure. Okay. Vine weevils. I think they're every gardener's sort of nemesis, aren't they? Them and slugs. So
Yes,
away you go with the vine weevil.
Well, I actually got a bag of chicken compost pellets recently, and when I opened it up, it was full of vine weevil. You could see the little white grubs in there, so I didn't use that at all. But it's good practice to check your compost for any white weevils, because it's in the compost that they tend to come in. You'll find that the adult weevils will come in along the ground. So a good way of stopping them from laying their eggs is to plant your veg in pots so that they can't climb up to them. But like I said, it's the grubs really that do most of the damage. They will eat your seedlings and eat the roots. But that'll be on the next slide along really when we come to that. This slide just shows you the adult vine weevil, and they're quite visible to see. So, you know, if you go out at night time with a torch and look under pots and look under stones, and you'll see them scurrying around, and that's the time to sort of get rid of them if you can.
Because the grubs live in the soil as well, you can disturb the soil slightly, just scratch it. That might turn them up to the surface, and then generally there's a robin somewhere close. It's great food for a robin. So it's finding out obviously where they are. If your plants are getting damaged, the grubs are going to be somewhere close. So you could just disturb around the plant, maybe cover it with some like horticultural membrane. That should stop them getting out. Stop the adults laying the eggs in the soil as well. So it's preventative as well as actually catching them. Prevention is probably better than post, really. So.
Sure, and I suppose a good tip is if you buy anything from a garden centre, to check it. You know, to check the pot and check it before you plant that out. We've got, just before we move on to the next slide, we've got Chris has asked a question here to say, how do you get rid of flatworms? I'm assuming he's talking about the New Zealand flatworm.
You can't really. I think they're here to stay. Simple as that. They're so widespread. They're so voracious at spreading as well, even though they're just a worm. They get picked up on soil, taken elsewhere. It's just part and parcel now of our ecosystem, I think.
Sure. And they are an invader that actually came in from, well, New Zealand, I suppose. But
well, the only thing is, like Chris says, they're so hard to get rid of. But if you encourage your hedgehogs into your garden, because, you know, that's part of their staple diet, they'll eat worms. They're not bothered if they're flatworms or your common garden worm. They'll eat all of them. So, or even a pond. Get a pond in there for your toads or your frogs. You know, encourage wildlife into your garden.
Yeah.
You can probably keep them down, suppress the population a bit. But if you've already got flatworms, they're coming in from elsewhere, and I mean, it's such a widespread problem these days. Until they find something that eats the flatworms, other than hedgehogs and frogs, then it's here to stay, I suppose. It's hard to say, but it's just one of them things.
And the problem with flatworms, in case people don't know, is that they prey on our earthworms.
Yes.
That's the problem with them. Okay, so I know you probably talked about the vine weevil grub in the last slide.
Yeah.
Already, so we'll move on to the next slide then. Slugs and snails, that old favourite.
Gardener's favourite, eh?
So where you go, Kieran?
Well, like I say, you'll see the slimy trails in the morning. You'll see the damage that they've caused. Like we've said before, if you look under pots, look under stones. If you plant a lot of your vegetables in pots, then you can move them higher up so that they can't get up. I've put down there copper. They don't like copper, but I've also put rings of grease around my plant pots, which they just can't go up. They don't like a really gritty surface. A lot of people are using bark chippings now in their gardens, but they like to hide underneath the bark. So maybe if you have got that, put a couple of, bits of around the pot of gritty stone so that they can't get to your pots. I have put grit in between the plants as well, just to stop them. They just don't like that sort of surface. And again, like we said before, if you can encourage a natural predator into your garden, like hedgehogs, they'll be scavenging for them at night time when they come out. Birds will eat slugs. That's why we try not to use slug pellets. And chickens, you know, if you wanted to have chickens in your garden, the only trouble is chickens tend to eat your green as well, but you know, they'll eat your slugs. I don't think I've left much for you there, Chris, but please come in and...
I mean, Kieran's covered most of the points there. If you do bits of everything, that'll increase your chances of catching more slugs. There's beer traps as well. Just your cheapest, simplest beer from the likes of Tesco's, which is about 25 pence a tin. Just pour that in a sunken plastic cup. And the slugs will fall in. It's quite, I mean, we've found 9 or 10 over one night falling in. But build the slugs somewhere to live as well, somewhere where they'd love to go during the daytime. And all you have to do is just pick it up, and then that's where they'll be, so you can get rid of them. So little upturned pots in your garden next to your plants. The daylight will be coming, so they'll crawl somewhere dark, nice and damp, and then you should be able to find them easier. There's more complex ways, like getting the nematodes from the slugs themselves, brewing them in buckets, and then putting that back on the soil, so then they reinfect some of the other slugs and suppress them that way. But I mean, that's science. And if you are using the copper, you need to get high quality copper, something with high copper content. Some of the strips that you buy are very low copper, they're just a copper colour, and slugs don't seem to be deterred by the cheaper versions. So get as high quality copper as you can, and then that should help. Like, yeah, salt as well. I put, I wouldn't put salt on the plants, but I put it around the pots, just in a ring. It lasts until it rains or a strong wind blows it, but again, that stops them. They absolutely hate salt. It's, I mean, it's terrible if you've ever seen it. They just dissolve in seconds. Like, so.
Well, lots of great ideas there. Also, coffee grounds.
Coffee grounds, yeah. You can't actually, by European law, you can't put it down as a pest deterrent, but you can put it down as a fertilizer, and then the pest deterrent is a knock-on effect. It just hasn't been passed by the European court, so
that's mad.
Put it down as a fertilizer. It's full of nitrogen. I mean, it's absolutely full of nitrogen. So a nice big thick ring of that. It's nice and gritty. They don't like it. It feeds your plants as well as deterring the slugs. Everybody
be going to their local takeaway coffee shop now tomorrow to get the coffee grounds.
I mean, them coffee people, they just give it away. They have it bagged up, ready for people. So
fantastic.
Check it out.
Yeah. Chris has had another wee question about just about the New Zealand flatworm, to say he found a load of them under plastic this year or last year. Could you trap them and burn them or feed them to something? I suppose you could leave them out, but
I mean, they are just an earthworm. Literally, they've got the same build-up as anything earthworms that we've got. Just they are predatory as well, so they would eat our earthworms. But you can feed them, yeah, like Kieran was saying, to hedgehogs, or leave them out for birds. Birds would come along, take them, especially in summer when they're feeding the young. If they can find a lovely tub of earthworms, that's give the chicks a good start in life.
Absolutely. Well, so that's a good, put them in a wee tub to stop them escaping, but that'll let the birds come and pick them off. Brilliant. Okay. Thrips is the next thing then, Kieran.
Thrips, yeah, these are very hard to find. I find them on my cucumbers. They're very tiny, thin-like insects, really. But they do, you'll see the tiny puncture marks where they've laid their eggs. Again, it's a case of having to get rid of them. The soapy spray is a great way of getting rid of them again, just like you would the aphids. Any soft-bodied insect like aphids and thrips, your soapy spray is a good contact killer for those. It's the soap that actually kills them.
And sorry, just for, whoops, I'm going to the wrong place again. It's just for, you're talking about soapy spray there, guys, and we were talking about that before we came on air. How would you go about making your soapy spray?
Well, it's a mixture of very good quality soap, really. It's, I'm trying to think of an eco-friendly soap that hasn't any detergent in it whatsoever. And then just make a really mild solution. But like I said earlier, always test it first, do a test, because if it's not killing them, then you might need to add a bit more soap to your water. Or if it's damaging your plants, reduce the amount that you're putting in. I tend to put about 2 tablespoons into about a gallon of water, give it a good shake up, and that'll last me a year at least for that. And then I just tip it into a recycled spray bottle, something like this, you know, that's been thoroughly washed out. This is one I've got garlic and chili spray in this diluted. So that would be a preventative. I would spray that on before I even see any aphids or thrips, just to deter them from coming on. You know, like Chris said earlier, prevention is far better than the cure. So that's just a mixture of chili and garlic that I've chopped up, boiled up, and left it to dry, to cool down. Sorry, not to dry out. Left it to cool down, and then I've just kept that. And that bottle there that I showed you, I've had that for a year now, and that's still only half full. But yeah, if you thoroughly soak underneath your plants, leaves, and on the tops, and you'll see them just drop off. You could wash them the next day, your leaves, just so that you're getting rid of that soapy residue. But that's the best deterrent I've found, the soapy spray. Maybe Chris has found something else that you could use.
No, I mean that's
the only one you've found as well.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we've touched on this already, but worth saying again, earwigs, pest or predator?
Yeah, well, like we said earlier, but you can see there the little rolled up newspaper, damp newspaper. Just roll it up, put an elastic band on, because they don't actually bite. I've never been bitten by an earwig when I've picked it up and put it onto a plant, but a lot of people don't like them. So if you leave these little traps, they'll, like Chris said, for the slugs, they go in there at night time when the sun's coming up, and then they'll hide in there. So you just pick it up, take it to your plant where you've got your infestation of aphids, and then, you know, they'll do their job there.
Sure. I just did more questions coming in. Guys, there's another one from Chris here to say that the snails are absolutely voracious on where he is, and they've nearly given up on their veg because they've used eggshells, copper, grit, all of that, and tried collecting them at night and gave up counting at 500. And could you use something like chili or garlic spray against the slugs as well?
Well, do you know what? If he's getting that much of a problem, he might just invest in an organic horticultural fleece and cover them so that the slugs can't actually get onto the plants. You know, that might be his best bet.
Yeah. Kieran mentioned not using the blue pellets because they get further up the food chain. Things like birds that eat the slugs or the snails would then ingest the blue pellets and then they start to die. But there's a new range out now made of iron-based ones. I can't remember, iron phosphate or something.
Ferric phosphate?
Ferric phosphate. They don't actually harm anything higher like birds. They're not ingested, they're not poisonous, but they will still kill slugs and snails. It is using chemicals, I suppose, but they're not going to be harmful to other higher animals like hedgehogs or thrushes. It might just give you a nice bit of breathing space where you can keep on top of them after that.
I would use some of them myself if I was having a bad time, but also I would say to you, Chris, that the fact that you are picking off 500 is brilliant. And if you go out, and we have that here too, you know, because we're trying to grow vegetables in the middle of the country, in the middle of fields. And for nights and nights and nights in the springtime, we would pick hundreds off. You know, it's just mad. But actually, by doing that, you're really, really reducing the numbers and reducing the number of eggs that they're laying as well. So don't be disheartened by that. I would be really heartened by that, and just keep at it as well. As the guys say, the more things you do, you know, the more you will get on top of them.
If you keep doing that, you'll probably see the size of the snails slowly decline. And as you're picking the adults before the breed, the snails should get smaller. And if you keep catching them before the breed, next year you might be on top of the problem, really. They should hatch, they start to grow, but you're catching them before they get to an age where they'll breed. You'll never ever get rid of them, really. But I mean, 500 is amazing. Just keep trying.
Just keep at it, I think.
Keep at it, and I don't think you'd get many nights like that. You'll soon see a decimation in the population.
Yeah, totally, absolutely, because that's a big number
It is, yeah. So.
We have another question here from Nicola to say, are there any other concoctions like the garlic and chili mix that you would recommend for other beasties?
Yeah, sorry, Chris.
No,
go on, Chris.
I was just saying before we started to Kieran and Jilly that mouthwash that we use, it's good for some of the molds, like the mildews and things, the fungus. Just put that in a spray and spray it on. Plants will smell nice, and it should kill all the likes of the powdery mildews anyway. So it's nice and cheap. I mean, you can get some for like 50p for a 500 mils. Just water that down in a bottle, and Bob's your uncle. Even though he was my dad, he's Bob's your uncle to everyone else. But there's also apple cider vinegar as well. Just 2 tablespoons of that in about a litre of water. That's great for some of the mildews. So, I mean, try anything. Like, obviously, the cider vinegar is quite acidic. But baking soda, 2 tablespoons of that in a non-detergent type of soap. Again, that would work. So...
tobacco, ground out tobacco that you can mix that with your water. There's stuff called Namer oil, but it's very hard to get and it's expensive. I always try and go for the least expensive that I can find, you see. But there is, like Chris said, there's loads out there. Mint tea bags, when you're finished with your mint tea, just put that into some water. It's the peppermint. They just don't like the smell of it. Sometimes that'll work.
Sure. And I suppose if you were growing mint, you could make your own concoction.
You could plant it next to some of your plants, but obviously plant it in a pot so it doesn't spread and take over. But just plant a wee border or in the corners of your beds, just dotted about your garden, and that should help.
Sure.
Sorry, Kieran.
I think plant marigolds as well, something that they don't like the smell of. That's great.
I was doing research on how to stop squirrels eating apples as well. So I mean, this is going up from insects now to the higher organisms. And if I found some coyote urine, I could spread that around the bottom of the tree, and that would stop the apples getting stolen. But no shop has coyote urine in Northern Ireland.
No, that'd be a mad thing. It was like who was talking about? I think one of the other webinars, Kieran was talking about lion manure, weren't you?
Yeah, kept for the rabbits.
Okay.
I mean, there's all different ways anyway. If you are stuck, just Google search ways to stop whatever your problem is, and then you get a whole list. Some might be easier to source than others, so just trial and error, really. See what works, see what doesn't. So.
Okay, so next varmint is allium leaf miner.
Yeah, I mean these are these are mainly your onions and your garlic, your shallots, and this is where they're very susceptible. The same as your leeks. These are the sort of families that this one will go for, and it's very similar to the one we mentioned earlier, where you'll see the tunnels where the eggs have been laid. The best cure for this is a preventative, to spray them with the garlic and chili, really spray, but that's the best one really. But you can protect the plants with some mesh or the fleece that I mentioned earlier, because if they can't get to the plants, then they can't lay their eggs, and this is the problem that we're going to be getting.
Sure.
Another thing that you could do is sort of plant your produce out of season. These tend to go for the summer months, so if you was to plant them earlier, the plant gets a bit bigger and it's a bit more residual to attack. So that's another option for you to look at, planting them a bit earlier on, especially if we've got a milder spring. That's the best way of doing it.
Sure. Okay. Thank you for that. Now, cats and dogs, and I love these. I love these photographs, but probably not so much for the dogs. But I do hear a lot of people complaining about cats. So, what have you got to say about those, guys?
Well, I couldn't resist the one in the middle when I seen that picture.
Yeah.
How to plant your cats, but yeah, I have trouble with a cat. She's a very young cat and she's still learning, and she'll dig and just fertilize everything on me. That's what she does. That's her little job in life. But it's the destruction, the digging up, or they will go and sleep in your herb beds and stuff like that, because just like we are, they find herbs, the smell of herbs, calming, and just like humans do. So the best thing is to sort of discourage them. You could put a little fence up, but or encourage them to a different side of your garden with herbs or catnip. They love catnip, so if you planted that, they tend to go to that side of the garden rather than your vegetables. That's the best deterrent I can think of.
Sure. Okay.
Sorry. Excuse me. They do like bare soil and things like that. So if you can cover up the big areas of bare soil around your plants with maybe cardboard, which would also act as a bit of a mulch. But I bought there's a mix between orange and pepper, just in a little tube from B&M of all places. I thought, well, I'll try it. I was losing a lot of potatoes and things when they were coming up. Cats were going in, and I thought, I'm not eating them potatoes. So I just bought this pepper and orange spray, which is non-harmful. Absolutely covered the two raised beds I had the potatoes in, and no more damage after that. They never came back.
Wow.
Obviously, the pepper must irritate the nose, and the orange must be a horrible smell to them. So it's non-harmful to cats. It just stops them digging and moves them on somewhere else. So I found that was the most effective thing I've found anyway.
Very good. And I suppose if you couldn't find that to buy, you probably could make that yourself from orange sauce and black pepper, maybe.
Yeah. But I mean, I bought it comes in about a litre container for about £2 or £3. So I mean, if you are going to make it, then it would be a bit more expensive. But
sure, it would be hard to beat that, wouldn't it?
So yeah, it did work anyway.
Fantastic. And so next up we have, oh, sorry, I've got one comment actually from Nicola to say her granny used to fill a Coke bottle with water and put it in her flower bed, and then they think it's another cat. Is that?
Yeah, I've seen things like cut out silhouettes of cats, flashy things that spin like a CD, and things that would distract them. Cats are very, very timid, believe it or not, and they will run once they see something they don't understand. So yeah, I mean, whatever Nicola said, and you see cats like silhouettes, like I say, with the back arch, so it's a defensive posture or an attack posture. Cats will generally move away somewhere else.
That's good. That's really good tip, actually. Then, so bunny rabbits. We're on the bunny rabbits then.
Yeah, well, you can tend to see the destruction that they make. The best thing is chicken wire, really, and keep them out of your garden. If you see a hole where they're coming in, try and block that hole, fill it in, put a fence up. The only way.
Yeah. Like Kieran said, the chicken wire, don't just bury it down, actually put some sideways as well. So they try and dig through it first instead of digging under, and they just can't get in. So, but it's not much of a problem over in Northern Ireland compared to, say, parts of England and Scotland. So, I mean, yeah, if you've got them, I mean, you can eat them if you eat meat.
Sure. I think too the thing to watch as well is with rabbits, or indeed hares if you have them, is that they can eat the bark off your apple trees if you have some. So if you look out for that, you can use, I know what we did here was use a bit of shoring pipe, and just split it down and put it round, and that kind of protects the trunk of your apple tree too.
I think that's just the gardener's drain pipe, isn't it? The thin plastic drain pipe with holes in.
Yeah.
So I mean that's readily available everywhere. You might even get some offcuts off a farmer or off anyone that's doing contracts around the area. Just ask them now.
That's right. Okay, so birds, pest to some, hero to others. I think they're a mixture of both, really, aren't they?
They can be, yeah. It's like everything. Certain times of the year they'll be beneficial. Other times of the year they're not. It's like wasps during the summer months when it's nice and warm. In the summer months when it's nice and warm, the wasps will eat a lot of flies and insects that are harmful to us. But then comes the end of summer when the fruit's starting to ripen, they'll start to go for the sugars. So it's just finding out when to protect them and when to just try and stop them. But birds themselves, things like blackbirds would eat your apples. Just try and get bird scarers, like not flashy things, but strips of shiny plastic in your tree just fluttering about. That would scare them off. But most birds, can be beneficial. Things like the robins eat a lot of insects. So I suppose they're a hero to me, but I did lose a few apples to the birds as well as the squirrels. So,
sure. I think too, if you grow soft fruit like raspberries and blueberries and stuff, maybe it's good. It's a good thing to net those. Probably.
Yeah.
And also the brassicas, things like kale and cabbages, and we seem to have a lot of pigeons around here.
Yeah.
And they kind of go for that. But they do, I mean, birds, if you can protect your crops, birds are a brilliant thing to have in your garden, obviously, because they do eat an awful lot of your pests as well. Yeah.
Like Jilly said about the pigeons, you would need to net your brassicas, especially if you grow quite a few. Pigeons can come along and really, just when there's a few leaves showing on your brassicas, they can decimate it down to a stem within minutes. Like, if it's a pigeon damage rather than, say, an insect like a caterpillar, because pigeons eat from the outside of the leaf inwards, whereas caterpillars would leave more holes in the middle of the leaf. So at least you can narrow it down. But definitely nets and things keep birds away.
And then, so that brings us on to butterflies and moths, larvae or caterpillars.
Yeah, again, like we said, if you can deter them by putting up some fleece or very fine netting, but if you do find that you've got them, you can't miss them. You'll see them. You'll see the young eggs that looks like black mud underneath the leaves or on top of the leaves. If you can wash it off, it's good housekeeping. Check your leaves. If you see that they're starting to be munched, look for them, pick them off, feed the birds with them. you can, like we say, you can use netting, but it's a case of being vigilant and watching for them and picking them off. That's the best way I find to get rid of them.
Yeah. I was planting little seedlings of cabbages out once, and there was a white butterfly following me all the way along. Once I planted one, it would move to the next one. I'd move to the next one. It would follow me. And I went back and it had laid one egg on each plant. So, I mean, that was so easy to remove that, I mean, it's just, yeah, keep looking out for them, just lifting the leaf and looking for the little bits attached to it, things like that. If you have, I think it's a leek moth, you can plant things like carrots next to your leeks. So it's companion planting. The carrots produce a smell that they don't like, which scares the leek moth away. But then the leeks would also protect the carrots by scaring away the carrot fly. So it's find out what lives best together, like tomatoes and basil, all things like that. So yeah. So yeah, it's just a good way of stopping them.
Okay, brilliant. Lots of good advice there. Cabbage root fly. What do you look out for there, Kieran?
Well, you'll see that they've been tunnel into the roots. The only way I've sort of you'll see that the plant is wilting, and you know it looks as though it's dehydrating or whatever, and you're going to have to sort of sacrifice a plant just to pull it up and then look, and you'll physically see the grubs eating the roots. That's, you know, it's pretty much the only way you're going to know that you've got that sort of infestation. You got it's pulling them up to look at them really, but you know, just pick the worst one, pull it out, and you'll see the picture of it there. If you see the grubs eating at the roots, then you know you've got it. There's not much you can do really. You can protect the stems from the plant of the plant with some cardboard or some trying to think of it. You can get this like a tape that you put on it, but I tend to just use the cheap old cardboard. Like I say, I don't like going out and buying the tape that you can put around the stems.
Sure. Okay. And that I see you put there that encourage ground beetles because they're a predator of the cabbage root fly. I didn't know that at all. But
yeah,
beetles. Somebody once told me that anything that moves fast, like a beetle or a millipede, is a predator of something. So generally they're good. You know, if you're confused as to what's good and bad to have in your garden.
Yeah. When I say encourage them, you can build a little bug hotel in your garden, which you know will give them somewhere to live, and that's how you're going to encourage them into your garden. You know, you don't want to encourage them in by leaving food for them by your plants, but encouraging them in so they've got somewhere to live.
Sure. Okay. Carrot fly. I think anybody who's ever tried to grow carrots sometimes has a problem with the carrot fly, don't they?
Yeah. I mean, the best way is to you can buy carrot seeds, you know, that are tolerant, resistant to the fly. If you that's going to be your best bet. If you can buy the seeds that are resistant to the carrot fly, that's your best bet.
Yeah. I mean, they're called resistor fly as well, so it's a nice, easy name to remember. Resistant to the fly. But like I said before, plant some onions or leeks next to them, or garlic. Plant a row of carrots, a row of onions, and then that also helps. But don't plant your carrots in the same bed either. Just crop rotation also helps. If we've got carrot fly in the bed, plant your carrots somewhere else next year, and then that should lessen the population that are going to attack them. So just keep rotating. Let some of your beds rest maybe 1 year. But if you do have raised beds as well, the carrot fly can only fly about 18 inches off the floor, I think. So if your beds are 2 foot and above, it would take a gust of wind to blow them up. They might be just unlucky. So raised up or in high pots, or even a barrier around your carrots if you're growing lots of them. So that should help.
That's great advice. Thank you, Chris. Now we're going up the food chain again to mice. So how do you know if you might have mice?
Well, like I put there, you see the small nibble marks in your crops, but you'll also see the drop-ins. But my best advice is to find where they're living and to get rid of them. You know, good housekeeping again. You know, if you find that they're living in your shed, clean the shed out, make sure there's nothing in there that they can eat. You know, take their food source away from them, deter them. I've also put down there that having a domestic cat, you know, even just the smell of a cat in a place gets rid of mice a lot of the time.
Sure. I think if you actually I had this conversation with my mum today, if you feed the birds, that wherever you keep your bird food in the garage or whatever should be in a sealed container to stop this sort of a free feast for your mice.
And off the floor as well if you can. The higher up the better.
Sure.
But mice are brilliant climbers, like. But a nice thick sealed container off the floor. Just clean up any spilt food, and then that should protect your plants as well.
Yeah, sure, great. And that's where the cat comes into its own. Yeah. Okay, and then so general advice is make your garden predator friendly. And do you want to just quickly go through the ways? We'll just recap on what they are, Kieran.
Yeah, like I was saying there, plant butterfly, bee, wasp friendly plants. That's something that Chris touched on this early on. You know, the plants that they can get their tongue into. Wasps, you want to encourage wasps in. I know people don't, but as long as they've not got any allergic problems with wasps, you should be okay with them. Like Chris said, don't bother them, they won't bother you. Plant companions, that's again something that Chris mentioned. I think Jilly mentioned last week or the week before, having different plants in the beds. It just confuses the hell out of a lot of the insects, because they can't get to one scent, they can't smell it, so that confuses them all. Another way is plant different colors, like red cabbages, that confuses them as well. They're looking for a green cabbage and you've got a red cabbage, that confuses them. Plant marigolds or onions, I think Chris mentioned that, because of the different smells, it gets rid of them. Create a log and leaf pile and leave a water source for hedgehogs, somewhere for the hedgehogs to live in. If you encourage wildlife in, you'll be surprised at the benefit that you're going to get from it, because they will eat a lot of your pests, your slugs, even your flatworms, they'll eat those. I said create a bug hotel to encourage ladybirds, earwigs and other little beetles into your garden. And create a small pond. The guy who had the 500 slugs, maybe if he had some frogs or newts or toads in his garden, they would eat the slugs for him. And set up bird feeders to encourage insect eating birds into your garden. Use them flatworms, use your slugs, put them on a bird table, feed them. That'll encourage birds into your garden. Make yourself one of these preventative sprays, like we mentioned, the onion or the chili and garlic sprays. That the preventative, even just covering with nets or with fleece, prevent it before it happens. That's the best advice we can give.
Sure. Have you anything to add to that, Chris?
Just good gardening maintenance. If your garden's tidy, you'll have less pests. They will live in the damp corners with the weeds in it, underneath your leaves if you haven't picked your leaves up, underneath pots if you haven't cleaned your pots. So just try and take out the sources where they can live. A nice tidy garden is not pest free. You can never get pest free, but it will lessen the problems. Insects and things also come in cycles. I think generally most things come in a 7-year cycle. So if you're totally inundated with say aphids this year, there'll be less next year. As the predators are starting to breed, they would start to eat more, and then the aphids would get less. But then when there's less food, the predators get less. So therefore the aphids start to build up. So it comes in peaks and troughs. Most things are about a 7-year trough, I think. So it's just what might be bad this year might not be bad next year. But you can always try different plants and things anyway. And
Sure. I think you're right, Chris. I think I know we found this like 14 odd years ago when we started growing stuff organically, that we had every pest going, and you just think, how do they know? How do they know to come here? But over time, so the first year I think is always the worst. As you say, that balance needs to build up.
Yeah.
And be patient. You know, do the things you can do, like, you know, go out and pick the slugs off and under the pots and all the rest of it. But things do get better because nature does have a way of sorting it out.
Yeah.
You know, I think, and if you encourage frogs, and you know, we're lucky enough to have wee pond here, that it really does help after a while. So Jeanette has sent a nice message there to say, that was great. Is there a way of getting a copy of the slides? Because I will forget. So yes, Jeanette, I'm going to get that. I can put it as a link onto the Food for Thought page of the Live Here, Love Here web page. So I'll have that. I'll have that up in a few days' time, and I'll send a link with the email about the next webinar. So it's just left for me to say thank you very much to Chris and Kieran from the Conservation Volunteers.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks everyone.
So much brilliant information there, and yeah, we'll get those slides up, and well done to Maria for putting them together. And Chris has just said thank you. So I think we'll leave it there, guys. We've run a wee bit over, but so much brilliant information, and thanks a million, and we shall see you the next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night. Good
Bye,
afternoon. Bye bye.